To say this does not mean I don't think that this election was rife with problems and potential fraud. And to say this does not constitute being a sellout to the conservative populist movement that I've been fighting for 25 years. And it does not mean that I disagree at all with the president's right and obligation to pursue all legitimate legal challenges to this outcome. To say this constitutes living in reality. And if I offered you a false reality, if I told you that there was an excellent, phenomenal chance that the Supreme Court was going to step in and deliver a victory to President Trump, I'd be lying to you.
And all that happens against the backdrop of Morning Consult finding that Fox's favorability has taken a major hit since Election Day, among Republicans dropping from a 67% approval rating to just 54%. Democratic strategist Jennifer Holdsworth and Rachel Bovard, Senior Director of Policy at the Conservative Partnership Institute, are with us to talk about how Fox News has handled this whole period. Rachel, I look at those like plummeting approval ratings and I feel like you reap what you sowed, right? You led people down the garden path and created, in a lot of ways, this alternate reality for them. And now that you're allowing any sort of factual basis of reality and going against the president in any way, people aren't having it.
I think there are ways to do that, right? I think there are ways that Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham are taking people by the hand and leading them towards sort of the reality that we're in right now, which is that, there's going to be an inauguration. But I think more broadly, the Fox viewership is reacting to the fact that Fox suffers from the same conceit that every other cable news organization does, which is that whatever it says has like biblical power. They were incredibly arrogant, I think, in the way that they handled a lot of their initial election coverage. When they took pushback, they didn't take it well. And they, there's amazing clips of these anchors just, not even really appearing to understand how the Electoral College works. And I think their viewership honestly wanted a little bit more curiosity, setting aside, right, the Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani situation, sure. But like having a little bit more curiosity about the fact that this was a mass mail-in election, unprecedented, and there may have been some fraud, and looking into that. That's all they wanted. And so I think they're reacting more, I think, to the conceit and the arrogance and how they handled it than they are anything else.
I actually think that's a fair point, which is that, in terms of just immediately dismissing it and all that, well, just given the audience dynamics and all of that. Jen, I'm sure you think a little bit differently. What do you think?
You reap what you sow. I mean, I just think that they created a monster and now they're dealing with the consequences of that. And I've spent a lot of time on that network. And I do have respect for a lot of people that work there. I think that there is some journalistic integrity, but they have handled this completely poorly. And, watching Laura Ingraham qualify each of her statements, right? There's potential fraud. We're living in reality. It's frightening because I think that she even knows what it is she does every night, right? She said, I'd be lying to you. Well, that's the basis of the show, right? I think that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that comes out from that network. Now, what I will say, I give all of the anchors that are starting to acknowledge reality complete credit for doing so, because honestly, they will contribute to calming tensions in this country heading into the inauguration, which is very concerning, right? If you look at some of these conservative blogs and some of these right-wing websites, it is starting to get very scary in the comments section. Not just, we can poke fun at what they're saying. Actually scary, right? People threatening assassination, people threatening civil war, right? That is something that they have a responsibility to calm down. And I think you're starting to see the first steps of them doing that, and I give them full credit for it.
And Rachel, meanwhile, you have, further right, less responsible voices out there and networks like OANN and like Newsmax who are still willing to be like, we don't know who's going to be the president next. It's, they still won't call it for Joe Biden. And you see a surge in their viewership. There's a lot of people who they don't actually want the reality. They want the fantasy. They want to hold on to the belief. And there's always going to be cynical actors out there who are willing to take advantage of people and tell them what they want to hear. Is this going to lead to a sort of split? Is this ultimately going to be a problem for Fox News, especially with Donald Trump still being out there year after year continuing to claim that he was robbed and the election was stolen?
Well, I reject the premise that people want to be lied to. I think people want sort of curiosity. They want their views to be, considered and reflected upon, right? And that's not what you get from cable news, right? It's what you get from shows like this and sort of more the long form podcasts and things like that. But I think we're talking about this simply forgetting that, for 4 years, you had liberal networks spinning the exact same story on the other side.
Yeah.
In 2018, a YouGov Economist poll shows that 67% of Democrats thought that Russia stole the election for Trump. And you had networks fanning that night after night. And so,
and Rachel, as you know, we talk about that on this show, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
I also think it's fair. I mean, if you recall, Rachel, MSNBC and Rachel Maddow's her ratings plummeted right after that. So, we actually kind of saw that happen with MSNBC when they went all in on Russiagate. It failed, and things didn't work out for them since.
Well, look, people respond to market incentives. Fox is going to respond to the fact that they're losing viewers. One America, Newsmax, I think, may respond. They're not going to get a giant viewership by making up fantasy every single night. There's a segment of the population, I think, that would engage in that. But broadly speaking, I think most people are smarter.
Yeah, I think.
What do you think, Jen? Because I got to tell you, I see a lot of people who are making careers off of being willing to be as shameless as absolutely possible. And no, of course, people don't want to be lied to. They want to feel like someone is telling them the truth, which is why, to me, it's even more outrageous and unconscionable when I see people like Rachel Maddow on Russiagate, who I would think was way outside of what anything rationally was ever proven, or people on the conservative side who are willing to pretend that there was some massive fraud that there wasn't after they built the trust of an audience. And that's the thing. People don't feel like they're getting lied to. They feel like they trust this person. They feel like this person has been on their side. And so, no, they don't want to be lied to, but they want to believe the world is different than it actually is, and what's going to happen is different than what is actually going to happen. And if you have someone who's built up that trust over years and is willing to lie to them, people's careers are made in those moments when the most shameless actors unfortunately rise to the top.
It's Dunning-Kruger in a TV network. That's what's happening at OANN and Newsmax. It is this overwhelming sense of, I know better and I'm going to bring you with me. But I think that the people perpetuating that are the worst of them all, right? Because they know that it's not the truth. They know. Now, I think we can talk about, whether there's a liberal media bias. I don't think that there is on most of the networks. Obviously on MSNBC there is, right? But I think that there's a difference between opinion and news reporting, right? And people purposely conflate that on these conservative networks in order to lie to their viewership.
Well, there's going to be some disagreement in terms of the chyrons and all of that. I would say that there's a lot of complicity for everybody to go around here, and I fully accept putting many people on the right in the barrel now that it's their time and they're going along with something which is just as crazy as Russiagate. But I guess we're just going to have to end it at that, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great discussion.
Happy Thanksgiving, ladies. Appreciate you both so much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Guys.
Absolutely. Next on Rising, The Intercept's D.C. Bureau Chief Ryan Grimm. He's going to join us to discuss Joe Biden's cabinet picks. That is when Rising returns.